Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the warm-ups for the first half of the cycle that we are currently on. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to the correct warm-up packet cycle and scroll down the correct section and get ready to type in both the questions and the answers that correspond to the lessons taught within this part of the unit. Please also remember to format your content in a different colored font for grading purposes. Please remember to not submit just yet after this presentation is over, as you need the second half of the warm-ups coming later on next week. Let's go ahead and get started. From Monday and Tuesday, what exactly is gerrymandering? Provide details about how this process works and why it's complicated. In this lesson, we learn more about redistricting, reapportionment, and gerrymandering. Here's your answer to the question of the day. So, why is gerrymandering a thing, and moreover, what is it? Well, in terms of basic functions, every state has a certain number of districts that coincides to the number of people that live within inside each district. Every district is essentially based off of the state's population. Every 2 years, voters elect a single representative to go to Congress and essentially represent the people. Now, in terms of the census here, the census is a government report which gathers data, and it's issued and administered every 10 years. The boundaries of voting districts may be redrawn to represent a changing population and their changing ways. Gerrymandering is the physical practice of redrawing those districts in order to group all the controlling party's voters into smaller districts. This might allow them to, of course, obtain and keep more power. Additionally, the results of this is that we have a drastically unequal representation in Congress. To be clear, every state gerrymanders. And also to be clear, the ways that every state goes about this is a little bit different, for reasons which we'll get into a little bit later. In terms of the legality of all of this, the Supreme Court has ruled that the practice of gerrymandering could violate the 14th Amendment on equal protection. However, the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, could not agree on the standard or alternative solution to gerrymandering or redistricting. This, of course, has proven to be quite complicated to deal with. What does the future look like for congressional districts and elections with gerrymandering in place? Well, people are now calling on independent groups to redraw the district lines and not politicians who hold power for themselves within inside states. Of course, there's ongoing battles in the courts, and also this puts state elections back in the spotlight of importance for people. Typically, state elections are not seen as very important as far as the state legislature, but of course I would argue that they are, because it is the state legislature that does make redistricting and gerrymandering a thing. Let's proceed to the next question of the day. On Thursday and Friday, what are some key characteristics of congressional elections? Provide a few examples that explain this more thoroughly. In this lesson, we looked at congressional elections, midterms, and key politicians in the Senate and the House. So let's go ahead and delve a little bit deeper. Well, in terms of basic functions, congressional elections are simply just elections that are held for members of Congress who make up our legislative body or lawmaking body. Additionally, the Senate is known to be more stable. You see less of a turnover rate and people who are often served for long terms. Additionally, the Senate's 6-year term often means that there are ongoing cycles of re-elections taking place, hence why some senators have been in the Senate spotlight for many, many years. By contrast, in the House, there tends to be a lot more turnover in the grand scheme of the House. Some people attribute that to the very short terms and cycles that you might see when it comes to House terms. There are also several advantages to being in the Senate or the House for a long period of time. We call this the incumbent advantages. For example, having staff, having free mail or the franking privilege, having just basic name recognition, and of course getting money from key groups like interest groups and lobbyists can help and make a difference. Also, as referenced by the previous lesson, redrawing lines can be very impactful too, as politicians who are in charge of states redistricting or gerrymandering might create safe districts for incumbent candidates to not only have a better chance of winning, but also, of course, winning more consistently over the long term. Another final reason why congressional elections matter is because of balance. Congressional elections can change the balance in Congress for a long period of time. When, of course, one party takes over one chamber, this can, of course, cause a difference in the balance in the federal government. For example, we often look at midterm elections to be the ultimate telltale sign for how balance will play out for not only a president's term and administration, but also for the agenda and policy set by the federal government at large. So there you guys have it. Those are all the warm-ups and the questions of the day for this particular part of the cycle. Thank you very much for tuning in.